Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome into my PM live stream. So news update. We have Nick Chubb potentially going to the Texans. Now, I wanted to hop on and talk about this a little bit. I have really no notes for this video or anything like that. I don't have anything set up to kind of talk about this video. I don't have rankings or anything like that. I'm kind of just going off straight off the top of my head here, talking about what I think about this trade and talking about some other things that are going on in the fantasy landscape. And so I did want to talk about the Nick Chubb trade to the Texans. Obviously, it's not official yet. It's a likely deal. It's most likely going to happen. And, well, it's one of those things where it significantly affects the entire team, from C.J. Stroud to Joe Mixon. Obviously, the overall efficiency of the offense is going to change significantly. So we have credible sources here. We know that this is most likely going to happen. The Nick Chubb deal is going to happen. He's going to go to the Texans. And so how does this affect people in fantasy? How does this affect the fantasy outlook as a whole? And I first wanted to start about talking about Joe Mixon, because this is a guy in Joe Mixon who's been going around 4 fantasy drafts. There was a time last year where he was looking like he was going to be the running back 1. I think that, obviously, what is up, Vino, in the house? Good to see you, my man. I think, obviously, Joe Mixon is going to take a massive hit here. Even if Nick Chubb returns to just a shell of himself and isn't the player that he used to be after that devastating knee injury, well, Joe Mixon's going to be affected significantly. And this is a guy who, he's never really had good yards per carry efficiency. I'm not talking about Chubb. I'm talking about Joe Mixon. He's never had a season where he's averaged more than 5 yards a carry. He's now getting older. I already picked him to regress from a touchdown standpoint a little bit, because I thought that, hey, the touchdown numbers were a little bit inflated last year. If Nico Collins stays healthy, he's a red zone threat, probably going to take some touchdowns away from Joe Mixon. I already had Joe Mixon as an avoid, and I definitely have him as an avoid now, because you now have a significantly more efficient back, at least from a career perspective, coming over to the Texans. And this backfield is going to explode now as a whole, but what kind of touchdown upside can Joe Mixon possibly have when Nick Chubb is stealing his goal line opportunities? Nick Chubb is also going to be, just cutting into his overall workload quite a bit. So it's obviously going to change things for the outlook of the entire Texans team. How you doing tonight, Vino? That 1-2 punch could be crazy if Chubb is fully healthy. Oh, yeah. I mean, this instantly becomes one of the most dangerous backfields in the NFL. Now, obviously, both these guys are old, right? Mixon's going to be 29 this year. I believe Chubb is going to be 29. He might even be turning 30 this year. So, we have 2 running backs that are definitely probably slightly out of their prime. Nick Chubb, definitely, considering the fact that he's coming back from the knee injury. But, 2 backs that have been good in their careers, and 2 backs that have prototypical workhorse builds and that could themselves head an offense. We've seen it in the years with Nick Chubb. We've seen it in the years with Joe Mixon. These guys can head an offense by themselves and touch the ball 30 times a game and provide elite fantasy upside. We've seen both of them do it. Now they're both in the same backfield, playing on a team that I think is going to bounce back from an overall offensive standpoint. I mean, I think that C.J. Stroud is going to have a bounce-back season, especially now that we added Nick Chubb to the backfield. And I'm saying it like it already happened. I guess it technically isn't official yet, but Nick Chubb is going to sign with the Texans, and this backfield is going to go crazy. But I wanted to kind of speak on how I think it affects this backfield as a whole, because it's a little bit confusing now. It's one of those backfields that it's kind of hard to navigate, what's going to happen. Here's what I honestly think. I think that Joe Mixon's value plummets. I think we're going to see him go from, a 4th round overall pick to maybe a 6th or 7th round overall pick. And honestly, I think he's going to be going too high even then. I wouldn't even draft Joe Mixon now. I wouldn't touch him. I would not touch Joe Mixon in fantasy drafts. I was already avoiding him. Now, even though he's going to drop an ADP with Nick Chubb in the backfield, I'm still not going to be touching Joe Mixon whatsoever. So I'm going to be staying away from him. I don't mind drafting Nick Chubb, though, and here's why. Obviously, he has a track record of being a more efficient back. Obviously, he's going to be used on the goal line because of the type of running back he is. The dude's an absolute battering ram. He's going to be used on the goal line. And on top of that, you're getting Nick Chubb in round 17 of these drafts. I mean, in these puppy but super flex drafts that a lot of people are doing right now, you could get Nick Chubb as your 2nd to last or last overall pick. So, this dude is an absolute value right now. I think what it's going to do to the Texans offense is going to be absolute gold. You have to account for so many threats in the backfield now that, even though two completely different positions. I think this is going to open up things for Nico Collins. I was already big on Nico Collins coming into the season. I was telling people, going at the end of round one, he could be the best value in fantasy. He has the upside to be the wide receiver one overall. Now you add a stud running back to the backfield. You increase the overall efficiency of this offense. Adding a better backfield always helps wide receivers. It does. I mean, it's going to help the overall efficiency of this offense significantly. So I think that Stroud's upside goes up quite a bit. I think Nico's upside goes up. But I think Joe Mixon's upside plummets because his touchdown numbers were already going to regress anyway. So I don't know. I'm going to be drafting Nick Chubb because of how late he's going in drafts, but it's going to be extremely hard to navigate like which players in this offense are actually going to go off. So obviously we had that today. Some other recent news, obviously Aaron Rodgers going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously this news is about 3 days old, but we're looking at a Pittsburgh Steelers team who still, it's still a bad system, right? But what I think DK Metcalf has some pretty serious fantasy upside now. We obviously know that based on the physical intangibles, DK Metcalf is a wide receiver one. He's obviously got the size and the speed, the physical prowess to be a wide receiver one. We've never really seen him explode, though, except for I believe it was the 2020 season was the last time that DK Metcalf had like a serious fantasy explosion. So it's been a very long time since we've seen DK Metcalf kind of reach that level, but he's now in the perfect situation. Obviously it's not a very good offense, but the target share is going to be there. This dude legitimately has a chance to have a 35% air yard share in his offense. If you come out any given season and say, I'm going to have a 35% air yard share in my offense, well, you have a chance to be a top 10, even a top 8 overall fantasy wide receiver. Even if he only scores 5 or 6 touchdowns, the target share is going to be insane for this guy. And I love the Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf stack. So I think it's a pretty big deal, Aaron Rodgers signing with the team. We know that Aaron Rodgers loves to hyper-target his wide receiver ones. So I think we're going to see a huge season for DK Metcalf. So these recent changes in fantasy, these recent changes to the fantasy landscape are absolutely massive. And I think we're going to see things play out a lot differently than we thought they were going to play out before these trades happened. So I don't know. I love this time of year. It gets me so hyped. I love the trades. I love the free agent signings. I just like to see these rosters change and how it affects our best ball teams and everything like that. It's really fun. By the way, it is storming like crazy here in Dallas, Texas. I mean, we have 80 to 95 mile an hour winds. They're starting to calm down a little bit, but sirens are going off and everything. So the weather was absolutely crazy. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Ask away with all your fantasy football questions. I'm here. All this is a live Q&A at this point. I don't have any material prepared or anything like that. So I'm just going to be answering fantasy football questions. If Steelers don't sign another wide receiver, I like Roman Wilson late. I haven't taken any Roman Wilson whatsoever, but I'm not opposed to taking him. I mean, like, they've got to throw to somebody else in this offense, right? They don't really, Pat Freiermuth hasn't really proven to be an elite tight end, right? An elite pass catching tight end. So they're going to have to throw to somebody else in this offense. I mean, they're just absolutely going to have to. So Roman Wilson, maybe not a bad pick. I really don't like Calvin Austin being drafted late in drafts because I think that he's just a field stretcher no matter what role he's given in an offense or no matter, what kind of wide receivers we have in the wide receiver room. I think all Calvin Austin is ever going to be is a field stretcher. Basically, I don't think he's ever going to soak up enough targets to really be all that fantasy relevant. I think he's drafted more based on hype because of his big playability. And we know the big playability is good for best ball, but if you're not going to be connecting on a somewhat consistent basis with your quarterback, what does it matter? I would much rather actually take Roman Wilson than Calvin Austin as a late round flyer. File on in, everybody. We are talking Nick Chubb, Texans. What do you guys think? What's your take, Vino? What do you think about Chubb? I know you like the move, but man, it definitely creates one of the most confusing backfields in the NFL. It's hard to analyze. So I do need to go in and do a little bit more research as far as just how exactly I think things are going to play out for this offense because I don't know. It's definitely exciting. I think it makes the overall efficiency of the offense better, but it's also very confusing as far as what it does to Mixon and what it does to Chubb himself. I know that I wish I would have drafted more Nick Chubb late in drafts. I'm probably going to start picking him up a little bit, but the problem is his ADP is going to go up significantly. And yeah, so I'm going to have to pay a higher price for him for sure. So let's start talking about some offenses. Let's start talking about which offenses we want to bet on this year. And this is a video that I've been kind of wanting to do lately because, you know, as much as I talk about and break down individual players, I don't talk about specific offenses enough. And a great way to win in fantasy is to just target the right offense and stack all the players together, right? Like if you stacked, you know, Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, together 2 years ago on the Miami Dolphins offense, you probably won your fantasy league. If you stacked Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase together last year, and Chase Brown, you probably won your fantasy league. So every year there's like a few offenses where if you target that specific offense, you have a really good chance of winning your league. And that happens every year. So considering the fact that, you know, it's hard to win a fantasy league, even a 10-man league, even an 8-man league, betting on the right offense and stacking the players together is a very viable strategy. So I want to talk about some offenses to bet on this year. And I'm going to be talking about offenses where all the players are coming at value. Now, everybody knows that's been following my channel that the number one offense that I want people to bet on this year is the Chiefs. So we just look at the value of these players, right? We've got a guy in Pat Mahomes who's passed for 5,000 yards plus twice in his 7-year career. We know that he has tremendous upside at the quarterback position, and you're getting him in round 6. He's a massive steal. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be the clear-cut running back one in the offense. He has pass-catching upside. He plays in an Andy Reid offense that's going to cut him loose. He's going to get 15 to 18 carries, plus 5 or 6 targets out of the backfield. He's going to be touching the ball 20-plus times a game. He's a massive steal. All right, Rashee Rice is a steal. This guy was on pace to be a top 3 or 4 overall wide receiver in fantasy last year before he went down with his injury. Rashee Rice is an absolute monster. So we're going to be betting on the Chiefs this year. Stack as much Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Patrick Mahomes, Isaiah Pacheco, Kelsey, and Hollywood Brown together as you possibly can. And this needs to be the number one offense that we're betting on this fantasy season is the Kansas City Chiefs. Vino, as a Browns fan, Chubb is such a hard worker, and I believe he will play with something to prove this year. Well, yeah, because everyone's trying to say that he's washed up after the knee injury, right? I mean, there was a time where people were saying that he's not going to play anymore. So, you know, doctors tried to tell him you're not going to play in the NFL again. Understandable. The knee injury was absolutely brutal. But, yeah, he's definitely going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder because, well, he wasn't even supposed to step on the field again. So another offense that I want people to bet on is the Dallas Cowboys. Now, everyone's going to think, hey, Bryce, you're a Cowboys homer. You're telling people to bet on the Cowboys because you're a Cowboys fan. Well, you know, I'm a Cowboys fan, but at the same time, if you look at the value for these players, Dak Prescott going off the board as the quarterback 15 or the quarterback 14, whatever he is right now, it's an absolute joke. This is an offense that is notorious for playing at a fast pace, for airing the ball out and being an aerial assault offense. They have CeeDee Lamb. They added George Pickens. They've got a stud pass-catching tight end in Jake Ferguson. We add Jaden Blue to the backfield. We add Javonte Williams to the backfield. We bolster the offensive line. Should I keep going? This offense is going to score a ton of fantasy points. And if you want to get as many Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Ferguson, Dak stacks as possible, I think that's going to be an optimal play this year. So we should definitely be betting on the Dallas Cowboys offense to go absolutely nuclear. And for those of you who play in a league with a kicker, let's just go with the full-on stack. Let's get everybody. So we're going to be betting on the Chiefs. We're going to be betting on the Dallas Cowboys. Another team that, like, see, I want to say to bet on the Detroit Lions, but the problem with the Detroit Lions is, well, everybody's going in the first round. You know, you got to get Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round. You have to get Amon-Ra St. Brown in the first round. You know, you're getting Jared Goff at a potential value, but he doesn't have rushing upside. And you have to get Sam Laporta in, like, round 4. So I like Mahomes, but it's such a crowded room of wide receivers. What do you think will be the most consistent? Who do you think will be the most consistent? Oh, Rashee Rice, bro. I mean, if you look at the underlying usage last year, this dude was getting close to 10 targets a game. And, you know, now, well, people haven't seen it in a while because he was hurt and he was out for the rest of the year. And the most recent thing that people have seen is Xavier Worthy, you know, being the wide receiver one in the offense. Well, the fact of the matter is, in the Super Bowl, when he went off for 35 half PPR points, and he did. He went off for 35 half PPR points in the Super Bowl. I know because I had a few teams, fantasy teams, you know, weekly teams for the Super Bowl. But Xavier Worthy did so because the Chiefs were so behind in the game. They typically don't play from behind a lot. They play from ahead. So those short slants they throw to Rashee Rice to kind of matriculate the ball down the field are going to be more of a common occurrence than the deep bombs to Xavier Worthy. He's still just a field stretcher at this point in his career. And while I think the offense is going to be significantly more explosive this year, and I do think they're going to cut the ball loose and let Mahomes throw a little bit more, I don't know, man. I think Rashee Rice is going to have significantly more fantasy upside. I also trust Isaiah Pacheco because I don't think Kareem Hunt is going to have the role in the offense that everybody thinks. He only took over last year because, well, Isaiah Pacheco was still playing with an injury. So on a week-to-week basis, I think we can trust Pacheco out of the backfield. And as far as the wide receivers, we can trust Rashee Rice. Hollywood Brown, at this point in his career, is nothing but a field stretcher. Xavier Worthy, even though he took a major step forward, I think he's still in the field stretcher phase of his career. And we're still kind of trying to determine, hey, is this guy going to be a field stretcher used for deep bombs, decoy situations, and end arounds out of the backfield? Or is he going to be a legit fantasy wide receiver? I don't think we know yet, but we know who Rashee Rice is. This dude's going to get 10 targets a game in a very good offense. He's going to be targeted within the red zone. So by far and away, the most trustworthy pass catcher is going to be Rashee Rice. So we're going to be betting on the Chiefs. We're going to be betting on the Cowboys. I'm trying to think of like other offenses that have like extremely good values. I know that those are like the two main ones that we're going to be wanting to bet on. You know, a lot of the other like offenses in the NFL that I think are going to be elite, you're having to grab guys in like the first round. You know what I'm saying? So what other offenses do we want to bet on? I think those are the main two. Now that's value wise, but you know, like if we wanted to go with like teams who I just think are going to score the most points and net you the most overall fantasy points, even if you had to draft their players in round one, we're obviously looking at the Detroit Lions. I mean, the Detroit Lions, I'll type this out here. Highest projected offenses is basically what we're talking about. Now, Vegas has the Bills number one. They have the Ravens number two, and they have the Lions number three. But for fantasy purposes, obviously there's no receivers on the Bills or the Ravens that we want to draft ahead of guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, right? All the elite pass-catching studs that we want to draft are basically going to be on the Lions as far as the top three overall projected teams. So, yeah, highest projected offenses for fantasy points. My number one is the Detroit Lions. I think they're going to amass so many fantasy points this year. It's just going to be absolutely ridiculous. So highest projected offenses, I have the Detroit Lions. And probably the Bills, number two, just because Josh Allen's going to net so many fantasy points. So those are going to be my highest projected offenses on the year. With the Detroit Lions, you obviously have to pay up to get guys. But for the Buffalo Bills, well, you know, you can get Keon Coleman in later rounds. You can get Dalton Kincaid in later rounds. You can get all kinds of guys in later rounds. So anybody who is just now joining the live stream, we're talking Nick Chubb. We're talking best valued, most valued offenses as far as where players are going in drafts. We're talking about highest projected offenses, everything like that. So just kind of shooting the shit tonight. I don't have anything scripted. We're just kind of talking some ball. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Ask away with your fantasy football questions. And don't be afraid to ask as many questions as you want. File on in, everybody. Ask away with your fantasy football questions. I'm here for it. This is just a live Q&A, so yeah, just talking some ball. So, Vino, do you know anybody else who would be interested in joining the league? We still have 5 slots available. So trying to get that filled within the next week or two. So just trying to get it filled up. Nobody has to pay yet. You don't have to pay until before the draft, but you can pay whenever you want. But I'm just trying to get the league filled up because I'm considering maybe like doing a second league too if like the first one fills up. I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. Oh my gosh, I should have included them on this list. How did I forget about them? Especially considering the fact that well, you can get Trevor Lawrence as like what, the quarterback 18 right now. Trevor Lawrence is going as the freaking quarterback 18, which is understandable because if you look at his fantasy career, the dude has not proved himself yet. In fact, he's proved to be nothing but a bust. He doesn't have elite rushing upside, although he can move a little bit. He's supposed to come in and be a generational talent, and he's just not shown that at the NFL level. So that's why he's going so late. But if you look at this overall offense, I mean, you probably have to get Brian Thomas in round 1, but you could get him at the 1-2 turn. You don't have to take him like super early, like some of the other elite wide receivers. And then you've got a guy in Travis Hunter who, all kinds of hype, but there's also doubt because he plays both sides of the ball. Is he going to be a corner? Like what's Travis Hunter going to be in the NFL? Like we don't technically know yet, but it looks like the Jags are favoring him being a wide receiver. So I think we're going to just trust kind of the process here and draft a decent amount of Travis Hunter. I wouldn't go too crazy with him, but if you want to stack, Travis Hunter with Brian Thomas and Trevor Lawrence, I think you've got a potential league-winning stack here. Yeah, the Jags backfield is one of the most – so I'm actually glad you brought that up. So while we're on the topic of backfields, the Jags backfield is definitely one of the most confusing backfields in the entire NFL. I mean, we've got a guy in Travis Etienne who just 2 years ago was an absolute fantasy monster, came out of college with all kinds of promise, was supposed to be more of a pass-catching back than he's shown to be in the NFL. So it's very confusing, when looking at Travis Etienne. But there's also been talk of him being traded, everything like that. So I think what's going to happen is I think one of these running backs is going to get dealt in some way or another. Obviously, Tootin just got drafted. He's going to be on the team. But Etienne, Bigsby, I feel like one of them could end up going somewhere, especially Etienne. I wouldn't be surprised if Etienne got traded and then we were left with Tank Bigsby and Bashal Tootin, leading the backfield. And at that point, both those guys are a tremendous value. But that's only if Etienne gets dealt. If not, it's going to be an absolute jumble fuck of just three-way backfield split opportunity share mess. And it's going to be hard to navigate on a weekly basis who we want to start. What I will say is this. As much as I like Tank Bigsby, and I think he's a talented back, the two most explosive backs in the backfield are Travis Etienne and Bashal Tootin. So if you're going for, I don't know who the hell is going to start in this backfield, but I want some big playability, I think those guys are the way to go. But at the same time, Tank Bigsby has the most upside because I think that Travis Etienne is the most likely player to get traded. And if Tank Bigsby ends up heading the backfield with Tootin as his backup, well, he has tremendous fantasy upside. So, you could literally draft any one of the three players, and they all have cases as to why they should be drafted. So, yeah, definitely a very confusing backfield. For those of you who are new, we're talking about the Nick Chubb trade. We're talking about how it affects Joe Mixon, how it affects Nick Chubb himself, how it affects C.J. Stroud. I think that Joe Mixon's overall opportunity share is going to go down. I think that his goal line usage is going to go down. I think it's going to be bad news for Joe Mixon, but Nick Chubb is a very good pick at the end of drafts now. So if you're doing your underdog drafts and you're looking for a late round flyer, Nick Chubb is the way to go. Bengals offense can go nuclear this year also. The Bengals offense, they've already gone nuclear. I think that, if you look at the implied Vegas totals, Joe Burrow is expected to lead the league in passing yards. It goes Burrow, Mahomes, Dak Prescott in order of who Vegas expects to lead the league in passing yards. So I think we're going to see one of those things where the Bengals offense just comes out and looks a lot like they did last year. They're probably going to freaking explode. Chase Brown to the moon, Jamar Chase to the moon. T. Higgins, I don't like the draft value, but he has tremendous weekly upside. Won people a ton of money on Underdog Fantasy last season. But let me know your takes, guys. Anything you want to talk about, ask away in the chat. This is a live Q&A at this point. I don't really have any material prepared. I'm just here talking fantasy football. So let's blow up the chat and ask as many fantasy football questions as you possibly have. Also, anyone who's interested, if you want to join the Patreon League, I am going to post the link right here. We've got a league forming this year. We already have 5 players in the league. Vino, as you see here in the chat, he's one of them. So we've got a it's going to be a 10-man league. It's going to be $100 buy-in, $800 for first. So a pretty good little chunk of change up top there, 10-man PPR. So we all like to play PPR nowadays. So that's the format we're going to go with. We're going to be drafting on August 3rd. So if you want in a new fantasy league, go ahead and join the Patreon and hop on in with us and have some fun with us this season. Yeah, guys, ask away with your fantasy football questions. Make sure to hit the like on the video if you haven't already. Let's boost this up the algorithm. Let's keep the comment section rolling. And a little bit of a light crowd tonight, but that's okay. Sunday night, people got work tomorrow, so I totally get it, but I'm here for it. I'm just trying to answer as many fantasy football questions as I possibly can. So ask away. So the draft order is going to be randomized 1 hour before the draft. So that's just kind of always the way I've done fantasy. I mean, let me know what you want to do. If you want to do something different, like, there's a million ways to determine a draft order, right? If you wanted to go with something different, let me know. You are one of the first people that joined the league. So I'm going to be taking input from everybody that joins. And if you want to draft in some different way, other than the draft being randomized 1 hour before, then we could do that. But as of right now, I'm just going to let the app kind of randomize the draft order an hour before the draft, but we can do something different if you want. So let me know. Welcome into the chat, everybody. We are talking Nick Chubb. We are talking Joe Mixon. We are talking about how the Texans' backfield looks now. And it's a hell of a lot different. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I've always done in fantasy. I mean, like, I kind of like the excitement of, like, not knowing where I'm going to draft until an hour before. Like, I kind of like that 1 hour window where you can kind of build hype and be like, hey, I got the, third overall pick. What am I going to do? And you can kind of start planning your draft. And an hour is more than enough time for me because I do so many fantasy drafts that, like, I'm used to drafting from every single draft position at some point in any given draft. So, yeah. Yeah, man, I'm trying to get the league filled. Rookie Woody Marks is in that Houston backfield too. Yeah, I don't know about Woody Marks now. I mean, like, what kind of opportunity share can he get now? You know what I'm saying? And it kind of sucks because I did take him as a late round flyer in some of my best ball drafts, but hell, I didn't know Nick Chubb was going to go to the Texans. Yeah, it kind of sucks. But, like, what role can he possibly have now? You know what I'm saying? All righty, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm probably going to get on out of here. A little bit of a light crowd tonight, but it is Sunday night. I just wanted to get on here and talk about some of the recent trades and everything like that. But it's good to see you. Thanks for coming out, Vino, being a part of the chat. And we're going to get the live chat going on that Patreon a little bit more once I get some more members. So my goal is for that to be like a 24/7 live chat where whenever I get off of here, you could just go on over to the Patreon. You're already on there and just kind of, take part in a chat that's going on pretty much 24/7. My goal is for it to be absolutely lit on game days. I want as many people in there as possible on game days, hyping up our players, talking about our successes, talking about our failures. It's going to be fun. The live chat is going to be one of the best features of my Patreon, along with getting in the league, obviously, and getting my rankings. But all right, guys, I appreciate it, and I will catch y'all later.